start with Mr. DeVore.
One of the jobs I had in the Army National Guard in California before I left the Army National Guard to go into the Army Reserve was I was Deputy J1, meaning I was #2 personnel officer in the state. And in that role, I went down to the border when the National Guard was being sent to the border to improve the roads and the fencing along the border. And what we saw in discussions with the Border Patrol agents was that a double fence lighted with a road going down the middle of that double fence not only increased the security of the border tremendously, it increased the safety of the Border Patrol officers because it was more difficult for people to attack them and then to escape across the border. So ladies and gentlemen, I think one of the #1 things that we need to do is we need to have a physical barrier along our southern border. The virtual fence is virtually worthless. And for heaven's sakes, now that we spent years doubling the size of our Border Patrol from 30 to 60,000, we need to oppose President Obama's proposal to cut it back again, which he just did a few weeks ago. It took us years to double that Border Patrol. That's why the National Guard was sent down on the border. So this is not the time to be backing off from our Border Patrol. Now regarding violence, this violence is escalating and it's likely going to get worse. There are actually more people dying in Mexico that are dying with the conflict in Iraq right now. This is a major, major issue. Now, ladies and gentlemen, if we were serious, I believe we can get control of our southern border. But people like Barbara Boxer, year after, I'm sorry to say her name, people like Barbara Boxer, year after year, equivocate on completing a physical barrier. She'll often vote for the authorization bill, but at the federal level, it's a two-stage process. You need to authorize a project, then you have to appropriate money against it to finish it. And she flip-flops, depending on the polls, year after year on that issue.
Thank you. Mr. Campbell?
The one extra step is the employer who hires the illegal alien is breaking the law every bit as much as the illegal alien who crossed the border. And we treat this as though it was just a minor traffic ticket. It's not. It's costing us every day in the state of California. It's costing us in the economy and in the budget of the state as well. And so it's essential that we apply a substantial fine to those who are hiring people who are illegal. And it's easy to check. E-Verify is already available as an option. We should instead say, if you do not have the imprimatur of the E-Verify, and we find that your employee is illegal, then you are a major violator of the law and you will pay. I've got to say, it's a little frustrating when the director, the Secretary of Homeland Security, Janet Napolitano, didn't even know that it was against the law to enter the country illegally. Do you remember that? It was about a year ago. She actually said, well, of course they're not breaking the law. No, it turns out that they are. And one of my students who's graduated and gone on to being productive emailed me the citation to the law, and of course I immediately sent it to Janet Napolitano and to the press, pardon me, and drew her attention to the fact that the next day she issued a retraction. So that's the one extra step. By all means, a physical barrier. The wage disparity is such, the cash economy is so appealing that otherwise no obstacle will be effective but a physical one, and the employer sanction and adequate personnel. Lastly, I would love to be able to get the foreign country to take the prisoners back. The problem is, listen, I'd do it if I could. The problem is, do you trust President Obama to negotiate a watertight treaty that will actually keep him in jail in the other country?
Time, thank you. If I may, just, you do have the 1 minute rebuttal, but could you add to it, what would you do with the people who are already here?
All right. First of all, about 4 years ago, I had a bill that would do just what Tom Campbell suggested. It would encourage businesses to use E-Verify. And I introduced this in California, even though you'd think it's a federal issue, because we found that 17% of Social Security numbers in 2003 were not valid, reported to the State of California Franchise Tax Board. And of those 17%, 5% of the total were simple errors because of the clerk at the company or because someone had their last name changed due to a marriage. That left 12%. And the majority of those 12% were in fact here illegally. So my bill would have given a slight cash benefit to the company for using E-Verify and a small fee if they didn't. And of course I couldn't get one Democrat to vote for it because I think it was a little too common sense. Now, what do we do with the people here? Repatriation and rule of law. If you're here illegally and you want to have a chance at living in America, go back out of the country, get an entry visa, okay, pay a fine, so we know who you are before you come back.
Okay, time.
On the one remaining question that you asked about, it is really important to get the sequence right. Really important to get the sequence right. Senator John McCain got it wrong. What he proposed was to have this pathway to citizenship or amnesty. And I totally disagree with the concept of amnesty. But he put it right forward at the same time as he was talking about border security. And if you do that, you're inviting more people to cross the border illegally. Get the border secure first, and then discuss the subsequent question. If you bring that up now, and I know that the President wants to, and the Democrats who are running the Congress want to, believe me, it will be the same as happened after President Jimmy Carter and President Ronald Reagan announced that this is absolutely the last amnesty we'll ever do, I promise. So don't put this issue in the wrong order. Get the border fixed, and then we can talk about the question that you asked.
We're not allowed to use the word terrorism. It's just been revealed that we can't use Islamic radicalism in our security strategy. How are we going to win against terrorists when we can't define who or what we're fighting? And this would be, Mr. Campbell, you would be first.
Well, this sounds like PC gone riot. Deal with the problem. And the problem is going to be identified as a clear groups around the world who corrupt our religion. The particular religion that they corrupt is Islam, and they use it as a justification for killing innocent people. Call it what it is. And if that means that you pay special attention to groups that fit that characterization, that is essential, or we're not protecting America. And this dang PC stuff, it's like, gosh, you can be politically correct and dead, can't you? So perhaps the clearest example of that is how you treat the prisoners at Guantanamo. I couldn't believe it. The President and his Attorney General want to offer Miranda rights and appointed attorneys and civil justice system in the criminal courts of Manhattan. Apparently the cost for the security alone was greater than what the city of New York pays for its libraries and parks in any given year. But that's just a fiscal side. Think for a moment about how you treat enemy combatants. The Supreme Court of the United States had this issue during World War II, and they decided in the following context, where saboteurs were landed on our shores in Florida and New York. Several of them had been raised in America. We believe at least one was an American citizen. They were arrested during the war, tried in a military tribunal, and executed. That is what is appropriate for the current crop of enemy combatants. You must be clear the difference between an enemy combatant and a bank embezzler. No doubt somebody is going to say Campbell coddles embezzlers.
I'd never say that.
No.
But Carly Fiorina might.
So why don't you expand on that?